Hi, everybody, and we're back. I hope that we gave you some tips today. Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, you're good.
Yep. Next, we're going to have my friend, Dr. David Schumann from Alexander Spine. I have to tell you, he saved my life. So 2 years ago, right after the last dance at my granddaughter's wedding, I fell and broke my wrist. And I had it in a cast for a while. And the doctor took my cast off and I said, do I need physical therapy? And he said, no, you don't need physical therapy. I said, what are you talking about? He said, just do these exercises. I said, no, I want physical therapy. And thank God, because when I went to Dr. Schumann, my hand could only go up this far. Ha! It's all good. So I went there and I did my physical therapy and took care of it. Now I can move my arm almost as good as new. So I also go there for chiropractic with Dr. Jody Sloan, and it's the best thing because you can't take care of anybody else if you're not taking care of yourself. So take it away, Dr. Schumann.
All right. I like the last thing you said there. We're going to talk about that a little bit today. So let me try to see if I can get this screen shared. Let's see. Going to start this slideshow. All right. So, can you see that? All right. Thank you. Okay. So I'm going to be talking today about keeping the caregiver healthy. And this is a topic that I believe is important for everybody because no matter how old you are at some point in your life, you're probably going to be a caregiver to somebody, right? So of course, early in life, we're caregivers as parents. And then as we get older, there might be a loved one that might need help, right? So, and then some of us have jobs where we're caregivers to other people, right? So I think it's important to keep this topic at the front of everybody's minds because it's going to affect you at some point. And a lot of the recommendations I'm going to be talking about today are going to be good for everybody. So there's really no audience that this is not for. Right. So topics that I'm going to be covering today are diet, exercise, and stress management. Now, these only 3 things on this screen, but there's a lot to them. And so we're going to kind of be breaking some of these down into subgroups and talking about how each of these are important. A little bit of background about myself. So thank you, Linda, for that nice intro. She kind of talked about how, what I do as a physical therapist. Just wanted to give you guys a little brief intro as to where I went to school. So I graduated in 2012 from Seton Hall. So I've been doing this for about 10 years. I have a Bachelor of Science degree in biology and a doctorate in physical therapy. And I've been working here at Alexander Spine Center in Florida since then. And I am a father of 5. Yes, 5. And it is lovely. All right, so let's talk about what we do as caregivers. So, lots of words on this slide, basically just listing all the things that we can do, especially when we're caring for someone that's older and can't do some of these things for themselves. We have the personal care items, the bathing, grooming, dressing, toileting, all that fun stuff, right? And again, sometimes people can do these things, but they might need help with some other more involved tasks like cooking, right? So it leads us to our second line there. Maybe they have trouble leaving the house, or might be doing shopping for them, helping them clean up the house, chores around the house, laundry, that kind of stuff, right? So what kind of theme are we seeing here? A lot of these are very physical, so physical tasks that can take their toll on your body. So of course, you're doing these things for yourself, right? You're doing your own chores. You're taking care of your own house, doing your own laundry, and you might be also doing this stuff for somebody else. Right? So these things do add up, and the physical toll can be mounting. Right? So last thing here, medications, which can be complicated sometimes, especially for someone that might be a little older. That medication list seems to grow as we get older, unfortunately. So just making sure that they're doing everything they need to be doing, all the recommendations from their primary doctor. Yeah, so it's a lot. It's overwhelming sometimes, and this is going to kind of piggyback on what Linda said. Is we have to take care of ourselves, and sometimes we have to be our own advocate. And so it's really hard sometimes. It's really easy to forget about yourself amidst all of these other things that we might be doing as a caregiver. And I think it's really important to keep yourself as a priority, right? Of course, you want to make sure that you're giving the best care you can to your loved ones or someone that you might be taking care of. But you can't really help them if you're suffering or your body is failing you because you haven't made it a priority, right? So I think it's really important to keep yourself important, right? I like the analogy, on the airplanes, I always say, put your oxygen mask on first. I think that really applies to this as well. I mean, what good are you going to be if your body's failing because you're not taking care of yourself, right? So don't forget that, right? You have to make sure that you're taking care of yourself along with everybody else. Okay. Moving on here to diet, right? So just a really brief kind of outlook of what the diet should consist of, right? We've got our fruits and vegetables, we've got our proteins, and of course, staying hydrated. And the last one is not part of the diet, but just something that's really, really, really important as a society that we need to do better at is consuming less sugar. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. Okay. Here's a fun fact about diet in general, that 80% of premature heart disease and stroke can be prevented through diet and exercise. Of course, exercise is something we'll be talking about a little bit later, but I think that's a pretty strong statement there. So we're talking about heart disease and stroke that are not genetic related, right? So things that we do to ourselves through diet and life choices. We're saying that 80% of these things can be prevented just by doing a better job. I mean, I think that's a very big number, and I think that everybody should be taking a long, hard look at what they're eating every day and seeing if they can make some better choices. So I'm hoping that I can help with that decision. Right. I'm going to try to look at the chat every so many minutes and just make sure there's no questions. I'll pause a couple times as well in case you guys have any questions about what I'm talking about. But so far, can everybody hear me okay? All right, thank you for that feedback. All right, moving forward. First thing here, right, talking about fruits and vegetables, and we all know that these things are good for us and we should be trying to fit them into our diets here, but do we know how good they are, right? So we think about what that brings to our diet, right? So fruits and vegetables are packed with nutrients, right? We're talking about vitamins, minerals, fibers, and antioxidants, things that we need, right? So we can get a lot of vitamins from fruit, from vegetables that, we might even be taking as a supplement, right? So why? We can get it naturally through our food, right? So why are we not doing this, right? We know the benefits of fiber, right? But fiber is very important for our digestive health, making sure that it's helping move stuff through our intestinal tract and trying to keep everything flowing and functioning well. So it's super important that you're getting enough fiber in your diet. And again, we don't really have to take extra of these things if we're eating a balanced diet, right? So I know a lot of people might be using fiber supplements on the side just to help kind of with that digestion process. But if you're eating enough vegetables, that's really should be necessary. So make sure that you are doing the best you can with that. All right, another really important part of it is that it helps you feel full for longer, right? Why is that important? All right, do you know how many people are snacking between meals, eating unhealthy snacks right? Because they feel hungry. And part of that is that they're not eating the right things when they're eating their meals, right? So it takes a little bit longer to break down some of the vegetables that we eat, and it helps to keep some food and contents in our stomach that helps remind us that we are not super hungry, and helps you get to your next meal, right? Which I think is really, really good. The last part about the fruits and vegetables is about trying to choose more natural and less processed things, right? So whole grains, for example, over like whole grain bread over white bread, right? So, white bread is something that's definitely refined, bleached, trying to get all that color out. Stripping the natural properties of food is not a healthy thing. Our body's definitely going to process and break down more naturally occurring foods, right? So we're talking about things like brown rice, quinoa, oatmeal, whole grain bread, right? So stuff that you can digest and process a little bit easier than going for that easy, made in factory processed food or modified food, right? So always try to choose the more healthy products, the more naturally occurring products over the processed refined foods. Okay. All right. Next thing we're talking about protein. Okay. We all know that protein's important, right? So, but sometimes we don't really think about the why. So, where do we get our protein from? So, of course, whenever we think of protein, we think of meat, right? A lot of us eat mostly red meat and chicken. Some of us eat fish, right? There's nothing wrong with that. I put the word lean here on purpose, right? So what do we mean by lean red meat? We're talking about, keeping that fat content down to a minimum, right? Your body needs fat, and not consuming fat at all is kind of unrealistic. But we shouldn't be consuming large quantities of oils and fats because we just don't need that much, right? So even lean meat has fat, right? So getting a little bit of fat is a good thing for your diet and making sure that you have that variety, right? One moment here. So what about the vegetarians? Right, so beans have a lot of protein value and can definitely be substituted for meat. So if you are just not a fan of meat or just like to eat less meat, maybe you want to go several days without consuming any meat, you can definitely eat beans as a replacement. Of course, nuts, eggs, and poultry. So, and there are of course other sources of protein that are not on this list, but just trying to give you a brief overview what it means to be a large protein provider here. So, what does our body do with this protein? Right. So we know that protein is super important and required, right, for muscle and bone health. What does that really mean? Right. So when you're consuming protein, your body's going to break that protein into the building blocks, which is the amino acids. So when you're using your muscles throughout the day, especially with exercise or something more vigorous, maybe you're carrying something, you're lifting something heavy and using muscle, that muscle can be damaged, right? And we need to rebuild that muscle with amino acids. So if we're not consuming it, we're not going to have that as a building block, or our body might have to pull it from somewhere else, and that's not a good thing either, right? So it's also important for bone health. So bones require more than protein, but protein is important in that process as well as compression, right? So making sure that you have the proper nutrition for the bones and that you're getting the required amount of compression, meaning standing weight-bearing tasks, stuff that puts axial load on the bone, which is a vertical pressure, right? So people that are sedentary, that sit a lot, right? It's important to take breaks from sitting and make sure that you're standing up and walking around and getting a little bit of exercise. Again, of course, we're going to dive a lot deeper into exercise a little bit later on, right? But I think it's important to kind of keep that large view, right? So why are we making sure we're getting the right building blocks, what your fruits, vegetables, protein, because our body needs it, not just to be healthy, but for all bodily functions. There's going to be a big tie in here, right? So if you're not eating healthy, if you're going to be functioning less, maybe putting your role as a caregiver in jeopardy, right? So we want to make sure that you are taking care of yourself and getting the right foods into your body. All right. So moving on to water and hydration. All right. So this is a pretty big one. First question is, are you drinking enough water? So I want you guys to just think about that line for a second here while I take another sip of water here. So what do you guys think? So a really easy, common method is to simply take half your weight and try to consume that much. Now, notice how I put the word fluids on this slide. So half your weight in ounces. So of course, I'd love everybody to drink that much water, but we get hydration from many sources, right? Not just water. Even soda, as bad as it is, right? You still get some water from that. Of course, vegetables, fruits are very, very high in water content, right? So yeah, maybe you're not drinking 100 ounces in water, but maybe you're getting close to that in the total fluid intake that you're getting per day, right? So water is just simply better because there's nothing, there's no calories there. You're getting, you're supporting your health without adding calories to your diet, right? So, you know, we all know that body weight is a problem in this country. As an American, we really do struggle with this. You know, the obesity number just keeps rising, and it's a real problem. And we'll touch a little bit on the different things that can happen to us as we lose control over our health. But you know, trying to stay on this topic for this moment, you know, in regards to water and hydration, you know, we have control over that. And if you're not, you know, prioritizing getting the proper nutrition, especially hydration, it's going to put other bodily functions at risk, right? So it's really important. So some other things to take into consideration when you're trying to decide how much water content and fluids that you should be, you know, taking in would be, you know, how active you are, where do you live, and your diet. So just to kind of touch on these briefly here, you know, if you're someone that likes to exercise, you know, especially outside, you're obviously going to require a little bit more fluid intake than someone that doesn't do those things, right? So we lose fluid when we sweat. We lose fluid when we breathe. So if you're doing a lot of these things, especially in a warmer climate outside, you're going to be really, really cutting back on your hydration. So you have to supplement that by drinking, right? It's very important. And then diet, obviously, if you're eating a lot of fruits and vegetables, then you're going to be getting a lot more of that fluid from your foods. So you might not have to drink as much. And there's also going to be variation person to person. So I say this as a general guideline, this whole half body weight in ounces thing. It's definitely not going to be a concrete rule for every single person in the world, but it's a really, really nice rough guideline, right? So, you know, try to just do a better job of getting some more fluids, and it will help you maintain the hydration level, right? So, another fun fact. I like these fun facts. Thirst can be confused with hunger, right? So sometimes we might be starting to get dehydrated. Maybe we need to have more fluids, and our brain sometimes thinks that we're hungry. So what do? We'll eat something. Of course, if you eat something that's high in water and, you know, content, then that's not so bad. But most of our snacks are not great, right? So if it's between meals, we might grab a snack of something processed, you know, something that's quick and easy, convenient, especially if we're working. And now you've just added calories to your body for no reason, because you thought you were hungry, but you really were just lacking some fluid. So one way to fight that is to, of course, drink water throughout the day, or drink something like water. Another easy way to try and drink water for those of you that don't like the taste of water is you could add a little bit of fruit to that water, especially citrus fruits, you know, just to give a little bit of a better taste. But again, you should be trying to find that value somewhere, whether it's, you know, drinking just bottles of water, or you know, consuming more foods that are just high in water content, like fruits and vegetables.
Doc,
another. Yes, ma'am.
somebody just asked in the chat, can you overhydrate?
So you can. I mean, I think it's really hard to do that. maybe if you're trying to, you can. I really can't imagine someone that's, consuming such large quantities of fluid that they're overhydrating. Of course, you shouldn't be drinking gallons of water every day. Like, even someone that's heavy, someone that's 250 pounds, for example, that's, 125 ounces, that's a couple gallons. So I don't really see the risk of that. Just, every once in a while, think about how much fluid you're taking in. It's really, really difficult to overhydrate. So I wouldn't consider that something that would happen, unless you're trying to. Every once in a while, you read a story about someone that did something silly. I think I read a story one time. This guy drank like 3 or 4 gallons of water within a couple hours. I mean, that's really not smart. Not only would that be uncomfortable, you just can't fit that much in your stomach, but it's just not a good idea. So again, it should always be something that you're doing throughout the day. You might be drinking a bottle of water every couple of hours. That's not a bad thing. Another tip is to always have a water like a refillable water bottle. That's what I meant. My kids like to have their hydro flask. So keeps their water cold all day long, and it holds a lot of water. So you can fill it up a few times throughout the day, and that you're getting enough fluids. Yeah. So that's a good question. Yeah, I wouldn't be so worried about overhydrating. As it's more of a dehydration problem. That's going to kind of lead us into our next slide, which are just some signs of dehydration. So if you're not really using the bathroom a whole lot, or when you do, it's very dark, that would be a sign that you definitely need more fluids, right? Some of the more dangerous things would be confusion, even headaches. Though you can start getting headaches when you start to get dehydrated. Dry mouth, excessive thirst, very common. Obviously, your body's telling you that you need to drink. If you're starting to get fatigued, lethargic, very sleepy, not a good thing, right? Make sure that you're getting those fluids. And of course, dizziness, lightheaded. So dizziness we see a lot. Sometimes when you're dehydrated, your blood pressure can sometimes drop a little bit, which makes it harder for the brain to get that circulation. Might make you feel lightheaded or dizzy. So again, if this is happening consistently to you, any of these signs, one of the easiest things you can do is just drink some more fluids and see if those symptoms go away, and your body will thank you for it, right? So it's really important that you are trying to get enough fluids into your body, right? All right, let's move on to consuming less sugars, right? So what do we know about sugar, right? So now, I don't want you guys to think that all sugar is bad. That's not true, right? So of course, fruits are sweet, right? Fruits have sugars. What's the difference between sugar in fruit and a complex sugar, like a carb, like a bread, right, or a pasta, right? So the sugar that's in the fruit is very simple, right? We call it simple sugar, right? Why is that? Because your body can break it down a little bit easier. It takes less energy to break it down. It's easy to use that for energy in a relatively fast manner. I always remember back in grade school, I was a basketball player at that point, and we'd always have like little tangerines or oranges at halftime, and just to try to get a little boost in some sugar, just to help give us a little boost of energy, right? And that's why fruit can be good in small quantities. But we're talking about the soda that's loaded with sugar. We're talking about excessive bread consumption, right? This is a problem, because if you think about the meals that we consume on a regular basis, it's pastas, it's these very complex carbs, right? Where our body not only has to work harder to break down these foods into simpler forms of sugar that we can use for energy, but it's just an excessive amount, and it's leading to us gaining weight, right? And that puts us into all these different risk categories for diabetes, heart disease, and hypertension, right? Which can lead to stroke. And it's a pandemic for us in this country. It's not good. you really should take a look at your diet and see where you can maybe trim some sugars, replace that with something a little simpler like fruit, or just eliminate it altogether. Find some different replacements that you can consume that's just less has less sugar content, or is just healthier for you. A recommendation that I read earlier, I think it was yesterday, I saw it from the American Heart Association, is that we really shouldn't be consuming more than 100 to 150 calories of sugar in our diets, right? Think about that. I mean, that's not much, right? I mean, we're talking about, a candy bar. I mean, if you're drinking a can of soda or a candy bar, you're pretty much hitting that limit right away. And we know that there's probably some sugar in all your meals, right? So another thing that I think is important to know about processed sugar, like corn syrup, or some of these products, that pretty much most of the products we buy that are packaged that are sweet have this high fructose corn syrup in it. These products are genetically modified, and they actually make us want more of that product, right? So, I mean, most of the time when we eat something, we're trying to satisfy our hunger or our need for something. And instead we're getting the opposite effect. We're eating these things and it's making us want more of it. And, that's part of the issue, is that then we continue to eat more, and then we're consuming way more than we really need to, which is leading to us gaining weight, right? So, I'm sure everybody listening to these words can relate. We've all been there. You just finish your meal, right? And maybe there was something processed in for some reason you're craving sugar, right? You want it to be a little bowl of ice cream or something sweet, right? There's a reason for that, right? So we have to try to just do a better job and cut down on that the excessive sugar intake, right? So try to decrease all those risk factors, and really want you to live just a better, cleaner life, so that you can be around for longer. And I'm sure your family and friends would like that too, right? All right. Moving along here, I'm going to take just a 30-second break. Just give me 1 second. I'm just going to blow my nose. My allergies are really kicking my butt today. Just give me 1 second. All right, I am back. It's a good time for any questions. If anybody has a second to write some questions, be more than happy to answer any questions you have. All right, so we're going to be moving on to exercise, right? So it's a very, very long topic here that, I mean, I could probably talk. Actually, I do talk all day about this, right? I'll see something in the chat here. Like to know how to decrease my desire for a sweet dessert after a meal. Oh, that's tough, right? So it's actually not unusual to crave a dessert after a meal. And again, you really can't eat a dessert. I guess you can eat it, but you really shouldn't eat dessert after every meal. I think it's important to satisfy cravings, but in moderation. So I don't think there's any magical formula for getting rid of that desire. I think that, if you're eating the correct portion size for your meal, you're allowed to have a small dessert after you eat. You probably shouldn't do it every single meal. I would say a couple of times a week should be the goal there. Not these heaping mountains of ice cream, right? Filling that whole bowl up. We're talking about 1 or 2 scoops, and trying to only do that once or twice a week. And that way your body doesn't feel like you're not getting what you're craving, what you're wanting. Sometimes that craving could be the result of maybe a lack of that in other parts of your diet. Just make sure that you are getting some form of sweetness there. So again, it's a little bit of fruit, maybe with your lunch, or as an in-between meal snack. Make sure you're getting some sugars. Or maybe you just got to make sure that you're doing a better job of staying hydrated. Sometimes our bodies think we want something because we're lacking something else, So I think, if you have this moderation angle, I think that's a really good thing to think about. And don't deprive your body completely of these things, right? So I really think that's an important point. Is sometimes you just want to have some ice cream, and I think that's okay, right? But it can't be a ton of it. So I hope that helps. Yeah, keep the questions coming in if you'd like. So we're going to be moving forward here with exercise. So again, I'm trying to keep the slides simple and just kind of elaborate. I kind of mentioned how I pretty much talk about exercise all day, every day as a physical therapist. And there's a lot of different things that we could talk about. So I think it's important to touch on what is considered to be the healthy standard, which is hard because we're all busy, Of course, if you are someone that is retired and have a lot of time to focus on your health, then this is really, really easy to do. But if you're a young adult and you've got children that need help and you've got a full-time job, it's hard. It's hard to find 30 minutes per day to commit to your health, right? So I recognize that, and I agree that this is what our bodies need, right? So if you can find 30 minutes a day to, and we're talking about moderate activity, right? So I'll give you some examples of what that means in just a moment. But if you have the time and you can do these things. Oh, I like that question, Donna. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. But if it seems like we're getting to the end and I haven't talked about it, definitely ask that question again. I'll make a note here, see if I can remember to talk about the stand-up desks, because I think it's a really, really important thing. In fact, I'm going to be talking about posture a little bit later, so maybe it's a good time to talk about it then. I'll put a little note here. Stand-up desk. Okay, I promise we'll get to that, but it'll make more sense when we're doing posture. Okay, so 30 minutes of exercise a day. So what are we talking about? We're talking about moderate exercise, not heavy weightlifting, not gym required. Of course, there's nothing wrong with the gym. If you have the time and you have the money to do that, great, right? But I would say the majority of people probably don't go to the gym. I was going to say the majority of people don't have memberships, but the truth is a lot of us have memberships and don't go to the gym. So it's not really a membership problem. It's a time or commitment issue, right? So so we're talking about things like brisk walking, maybe some water aerobics. I mean, I'm a Floridian. We get to swim a lot. It might not be true for the rest of the country. There's definitely indoor heated pools, but maybe that's not an option for you. But even things like gardening or landscaping, these are things that, you're not always lifting the heaviest of equipment, but it's physical work and you're doing it for usually at least 30 minutes. Sports, dancing, biking, tennis, these are things that don't have to be the extreme, like, a sport like basketball or some of the heavier, more contact sports where you're really exerting yourself, but you're obviously moving. You're continuously moving when you're dancing, when you're biking. And tennis is one of those things where you can do a lot of side to side, some bursts of speed. You got the arm activity, obviously, as you swing the racket. So these are just, again, good examples of things that we can try to fit in that will help us achieve that healthy standard of exercise, right? And I think it's important to make that a goal, right? So, let's see. I think a good compromise, right? So say you are, a young adult or even a middle-aged adult, and you've got a lot of responsibility. You have a full-time job, and you're really struggling to find time every day to do these things, right? I think a good compromise is maybe to pick 2 to 3 days and try to do this, right? So I think most people can usually find at least one 30-minute chunk of time, maybe even an hour on a weekend, where they can do some exercise, and then trying to make it a priority one day throughout the week to do that. And I think that is a pretty much doable compromise for all of us. You know, if you're lucky enough to have a job where you're exercising, that's great. But again, most of us don't. So, you know, I'm moving all day long. So I feel like I'm one of the lucky ones. I'm moving myself and I'm moving other people. So, you know, I do get plenty of exercise, but sometimes it's not the case. What if you are that person that has to sit at a desk, you know, for 8 hours, sometimes 9 hours, and you're on the phone and you're on the computer, and that's going to really help us segue into posture in a little bit, because it is just not a good thing, right? So sedentary sitting, I mean, this is just not good words. We have to be moving. Our bodies are meant to move. So trying to fit some extra time for exercise is only going to help, right? So what are the benefits of exercise? We're talking about all this exercise. Why do we need to do that, right? Why do we need it? We need that circulation, right? We need that increased heart rate, right? What happens when we start exercising? Our muscles are using energy, right? Where do we get that from, right? That's why we're eating food, right? So breaking that food down, you know, storing it as energy. Our muscles are using that energy. Our muscles also need oxygen, right? So our respiratory rate will increase. We get more oxygen to the blood. Our heart pumps that blood, full of that oxygen-rich blood, and it gets it to the rest of the body, right? That process is so important for good health. We need to stimulate the body and do that on a consistent basis to keep everything functioning properly, right? It's good for muscle health. It's good for bone health. It helps to decrease risk of heart disease and stroke and diabetes and hypertension. These are the big ones that really plague us as a society. It also helps you sleep better, right? When you deplete that energy and you get your muscles nice and tired, you're going to sleep better. You're going to want to sleep, right? It's important, right? It helps us to fight that weight gain. We're burning calories, right? So maybe we ate a poor meal. Maybe we had an extra dessert that day. Let's try to balance that out with some exercise and burn some extra calories, right? So it's really important. And I think another avenue too is balance, right? So when we're out there and we're exercising, we're doing some walking, we might encounter some rough terrain. We might come across something that like gives us a little bit of a jolt to our steadiness, our balance, and we have to fight through that. And getting that consistent work all the time, that's how we keep our bodies sharp, right? Our mind sharp. Remember, balance comes from vision. It also comes from our inner ear, and it also comes from our proprioception, which is how we feel. And if you're not doing these things, you're not challenging those systems. And just like anything else, if you don't use it, you lose it. And it's so important in regards to balance as well. So, you know, sometimes falling is it's everything. I mean, if you're someone that's, you know, in your late 50s and older, right? You might be starting to see signs of osteopenia, right? Some bone weakening, or even worse, osteoporosis, right? And you happen to fall, especially outside in the parking lot, for example, your bones can break, right? That's going to be so life altering in so many ways, right? So having just a little bit better balance might help you prevent that fall and keep you out of trouble, right? Very, very important. Okay, time check here. All right, moving right along. Any questions so far? No? Okay. Let's see here.
I will say, Doc, I like to say, when you rest, you rust.
I like that. Yeah. When you rest, right? Yeah. I mean, excessive, right? So, of course, we need to rest, but yeah, you can't be a bump on a log, right? You gotta move. And I could talk about this stuff for hours, but you know, lubrication, right? So if you don't move a joint, right, you're not spreading that joint fluid around. It's gonna become stiff. It's gonna be harder to move that joint, right? So, I mean, how many of you wake up in the morning and you feel stiff? You know, how do we break through that? We move, right? We get our joints lubricated, right? So having something that you can tap into, some type of consistent exercise to help you through that, I think is super important. And there's also psychological components to all this, right? So you feel good when you exercise, right? And I know you guys can all relate to that. You know, like, how good is that feeling when you just finish a walk and like you're getting back home? You're like, man, I feel really good. I just did something good for myself. My heart is working. My blood is pumping. I feel good, right? Why wouldn't you want that feeling more consistently, right? Okay. So posture is another one of those monster categories. I mean, we every day I talk about posture, whether it's work posture, computer stuff, right, sitting at the computer, or just general spine posture, right? So, I happen to work side by side with the chiropractor, so spine health is a very, very important topic to me. So we're going to be tapping into that a little bit here. So, as a society, we have extremely poor posture, right? And I'm sure you guys have noticed it, right? Now, sometimes we think about, that older person that's very rounded, right, and their head's down, right? And that's the very end range of the spectrum. But even we're seeing it in young adults, even older teenagers are starting to already show signs of poor posture. I mean, I see it every day. Why? What is happening? Right? We kind of think about all the things that we do, and unfortunately, our youth they're spending more and more time on electronics. The whole tech neck debacle, and it's a real thing, and it really shouldn't be dismissed. So we'll talk about that a little bit here, but if you just simply look around, next time you're in public, just take a look, right? So our true posture is really seen when we're not doing anything specific, right? We might be kind of sitting in a chair or standing and maybe talking to somebody. We're not thinking about it, right? So that's our true posture, and it's incredible. I mean, 9 out of 10 people have a forward head posture. It's insanely high. So what does this do to us, right? Why is it bad, right? So this is a list of how we can benefit from good posture, right? So we'll kind of hit on each of these and talk about, why that is, how that works, right? The first is the breathing, and this is dear to me because I'm an asthmatic. I've had asthma almost my whole life, and breathing is a touchy subject to me. When you have rounded shoulders and you have a rounded back and you've got forward head, it's going to really restrict the rib motion, right? Why is that important, right? And this is hard for some of you guys to relate to because you may have never experienced having shortness of breath, but when you can't breathe or you feel like you can't breathe, it's a terrible feeling. It's just like I've never wished on anybody. And so having better posture, it opens your rib cage up a little bit. So when you take that breath in, the rib bones, right, your ribs can expand more and allow the lungs to pull more oxygen-rich air in and help you with that exchange of gases, right? So really important to have that mobility in the ribs. And if you've got these rounded shoulders and everything is forward and you can't really expand those ribs, it's going to lead to you having less oxygen exchange and you feeling like you need more and more and more. So if you couple that with any breathing disorder, asthma, COPD, emphysema, any of those, it's really like a double whammy, and it just stacks up. And the older populations, we definitely will see decreased oxygen saturation as a result of poor breathing mechanics, right? And it's almost always affected by posture, right? So I'm definitely not saying that having good posture will take your asthma away. No, that's not it. It just makes it that much worse, right? So you have to make sure we're kind of paying attention to that. Spine health is such a big topic. I'll spend a few minutes on this. The rest of it will be a little bit faster, but forward head posture. Let's talk about that one first. So the spine is regions, right? We have cervical, which is our neck. We've got thoracic, which is our mid back. We've got lumbar, which is our low back, right? So these three regions are all affected by lots of things, right? Life choices, how we spend our time, right? Are we trying to improve that posture through exercise? If we're not doing any of these things for ourselves, that posture seems to want to get worse, The forward head posture, what does that really do, right? So having a forward head posture, and this can be a result of excessive flexion. So again, looking down a lot, right? So whether it's at your phone, maybe you like to read, you're looking down at a book, and then real quick, how do we fight that, right? So get those things up, right? Get the phone up. Maybe you prop your elbows up with a pillow. If you're reading the book, get a pillow under your elbows. Hold that book up in front of you so you don't have to look down as far. Again, just really quick aside for those those of us that spend a lot of time on the phone or reading, even like crossword puzzles, stuff like that, things where you're looking down at that book or that table. Not a good thing. All right, so you've got this forward head posture. What happens to the spine, right? The curvature in the neck actually flattens, right? Why does that matter? Well, we have curves for a reason, right? It's extremely important in lower backs. We'll talk about that in just a second, but even in the neck, right? So when you have a flattened neck curve, right? Not only does that slide your head forward, right? But it increases the rate that the bones and the discs will start to break down. That is a huge deal, right? So if you know anybody in your life, or maybe you are experiencing nerve compression, right? It is not fun, right? You can have neck pain, you can have referred pain to your arms, you can have numbness and tingling going down your arms into your hands, you can have decreased grip strength, you can be dropping things all the time. None of that sounds fun, and it's not. And a lot of it is because of poor posture throughout your life. It's always a good idea to work on posture, and it's never too late to improve posture. But unfortunately, if you have neglected it for so long and the bones have already changed and they're broken down, degenerated, and the disc is desiccated, meaning it's dried out, and there's very, very little spacing, you really can't undo that, right? So it's super important that you work on this from a younger age or earlier in life, to where you don't let it get that bad. It's still worth the time and effort if you're already, advanced, because you can take pressure off and help with your symptoms. But it's a big deal, and we can apply that same exact theory to the lumbar spine, because the same thing happens there. So if you have poor posture and you're slumping, right? So when you slump, you allow your pelvis to roll backward, and that flattens your lumbar curve, right? So I mentioned before that we have curves for a reason. One of the biggest reasons is to help distribute weight, right? So if you have the proper curve, each level only weight bears a little bit, a percentage, right? If you have a very flat curve, then the lower segments, which are going to be the last couple joints of the spine. So we're talking about L4 to L5, L5 to S1, they are going to take the brunt of it. So if you're carrying that 30 to 40 pound case of water and you're moving it from the car to the house, and you have a very, very poor curve or low curve, well, that last level is going to take the brunt of that weight. And it's not meant to do that. And if you do that enough, you can cause a disc injury. You can cause more nerve compression, right? The nerves in the lower back will innervate our legs. You can get that pain down the leg to the foot. You can get numbness in the leg, burning pain. If any of these things sound familiar to you guys, maybe that's part of your problem, right? So we don't want to neglect these things. So how do we help it? How do we help it? So let's talk about that stand-up desk, right? So Donna had asked the question before, what are my thoughts about the stand-up desk? I love them. Actually, right now, I am talking to you guys from a stand-up desk. So it's pretty relevant. So I'm not saying that you should stand all day, because that's not good either, right? But a lot of stand-up desks, you can either alternate, or you might have two different workstations, right? So it's super important to be able to change positions throughout the day. And this is for my working crowd that may have to sit at a desk, In a perfect world, you'll be getting up about every 30 minutes, right? Is that realistic? Probably not. You won't get any work done, right? But I think a good compromise is about once an hour, a couple times, 2-3 times in the morning shift, and then 2-3 times in the evening shift. Something as simple as standing up for 30 seconds is enough to really reset your posture. Stand up, maybe walk, use the restroom, maybe get a sip of water, and then go and sit back down. That's enough to break up that posture and give your muscles a reset, right? So that can really help with posture, right? Sometimes when we sit, we let our shoulders come forward and we're looking down, right? So sometimes standing helps to kind of do the opposite. It gets our shoulders back, helps us look straight ahead, right? Which kind of brings us to your computer, right? So if you're working on a computer, it is super important to have the screen right in front of your face, right? Your eyes should be centered on the center of the screen. And if you have more than one screen, if you use one more, have that screen centered. If you use them equally, have both screens centered to where you're only turning a little bit for each. Super important to have that screen up. And this is a problem for laptop users because the keyboard's attached to the monitor, right? So it's like, oh man, how do I win this battle, right? So you've got two options. One, elevate the entire laptop. That's what I do. So you can purchase a laptop stand, something that elevates that 6 inches into the air. Sometimes you can get a bigger one if you need to, but you want to get that up and further up toward your eyes. And then you would connect a second keyboard to that laptop and use that with a mouse at a lower surface. So COVID really did a number on us. A lot of people were working from home, and they had these makeshift workstations. And I can't tell you how many people came to me 18 months or so later, and they're saying, man, my neck's really hurting me. And sure enough, we figured it out. They were working on a really lackluster setup, and just making those little tiny tweaks to how they use their bodies and how they're doing their work. Within 3 to 4 weeks, these complaints were reducing. So don't just suffer, right? You have to sometimes take a step back and look at what you're doing. There's almost always a modification that you can make, and it doesn't have to be expensive. The problem with stand-up desks is that they're pretty expensive, especially ones that alternate. So it does get tough to be perfect, right? But you do the best you can with the resources that you have. And if you ever just simply don't know, you're at a loss, you can always reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to help you come up with some modifications to just work better, work smarter, and help your own setup, right? So but the monitor height is so important. You can't be looking down at the monitor all day long, because it's gonna affect your neck soon enough, right? So hopefully that makes sense. If not, please ask questions. I'd be more than happy to elaborate further. Let's dive into some of these other topics here. So self-confidence is huge. I mean, do you ever think about that? Like, just do it right now. Pull your shoulders back. You just feel more confident. You feel prouder. You feel ready, right? It's such a huge boost for confidence just to hold yourself up high. And if, in fact, we know that the people that are bent forward, rounded, especially if you can see this in children too. Like, if you're in a school setting, those are the kids that are struggling with their peers. They might be getting picked on. They're just not very confident. So it's so important for self-worth and confidence reasons to work on that posture. And it's not like you're tricking yourself, but it's definitely the way you carry yourself. You have to really hold that nice erect posture and really help to kind of transmit that proud, confident notion, right? Digestion's huge here. So if you have good posture, your body functions will be happening a little bit more frequently, right? So we think about the way the intestines are kind of positioned, kind of in the pelvis, around the spine, right? So if you have poor posture, you might be putting some pressure on areas. It's important that you allow the body to do what it needs to do, and the posture does help that, right? Headaches, we're talking about the neck posture. If you have poor neck posture, you might have some more tension on certain muscles, right? As the head slides forward, right, we change the muscle length of key neck muscles, and that can cause some tension headaches and really make you uncomfortable. So lots of times we get somebody in here that's having a lot of headache problems or neck pain, and they're not responding as well to chiropractic. We get them over with me and we start talking about posture, and usually within a few weeks, there is a much more noticeable improvement in their symptoms. And the last thing, body function, this is kind of a general term. We're talking about the spinal cord, right? So if you have poor posture, your spine is flattening and the curves are not correct, your spinal cord has to take a different route. It just gets a little bit crimped up, stretched sometimes, and it's not going to communicate as well with the rest of the body. So for proper body function, we got to make sure that the spinal cord has no interruption. It's transmitting the signal well from the brain to the body, and posture plays a large role in that, right? So again, trying to make sure that we are doing everything we can to improve our function, right? Oh man, I got a boogie here. So it's got about 7 minutes here. Let's see if we can get the stress steps. This is also important. Any questions about the exercise? Okay, so stress management, right? So why is stress a bad thing, right? Stress plays such a large role in blood pressure and heart problems, headaches, diabetes, breathing, depression, anxiety, a big one. This is not good, right? So we all know that feeling, that stressed feeling, overwhelming, anxiety, feeling anxious about something because it's on your mind, right? So we definitely want to have better ways to manage that stress, right? Stress can affect you physically, psychologically, and socially, right? These are three different avenues, right? So especially as a caregiver, my God, there are so many responsibilities. It's really easy to get overwhelmed and feel stressed, and it kind of puts you into a negative loop, and it just gets worse and worse. Another fun fact, 75 to 85% of all doctor visits are for stress-related complaints. Isn't that crazy? 75 to 85% of us that go to the doctor were complaining about stress issues. So obviously it's a large part, our country especially, we put a lot of emphasis on our job, and it just makes us more stressed, which is not a good thing. So how can we manage this stress, right? Notice how the first two things we just talked about, right? That's not a coincidence. It's so important, right? Consistent exercise, healthy diet. This is going to help our bodies function better and reduce stress. So important, right? Just the whole idea of screen time and phone usage. We know, especially social media, like when you log on your phone, you've got all these alerts and all these things, you get stressed. It's overwhelming, so sometimes you got to just unplug and just get away from that stuff. Procrastination is a huge factor, and this is something that I have to admit I do struggle with.
Just do it.
Exactly. If it pops in your mind, just do it right away. Even if it takes you a few minutes, just get it done. It's one thing less that you have to worry about in the future.
Well, you spend so much time thinking about it, you just stress yourself with it.
Just do it. And this is something that I've tried to do, especially these last few weeks. We're doing a lot of different things here in our office, and I've been just more efficient at just getting tasks completely done and moving on with my life. And I think that is a really good role. We think about priorities, time management. If you're scrambling last minute to do a bunch of stuff because you didn't really allocate enough time, you're not going to feel very good about it. You might even make mistakes, which leads to more issues in the future, right? Where you're going to increase your stretch even more because you have to now redo something, or you did something that was just wrong, and that's going to make things worse, right? So time management, it's really important. Getting enough sleep, right? We know that if we're sleep deprived, we're going to be more stressed, right? There's going to be more cortisol and more stress in our life. So real quick, touch on sleeping positions. For you side-lying sleepers, make sure that you have enough head support to keep your head straight with your body. It should look like it looks when you're standing. Just like me right now, my head is straight. I need a pillow that's wide enough or tall enough to make up the difference between the head and the edge of the shoulder, which you're laying on, right? So secondly, make sure you put a pillow between your knees. You don't want your hip to adduct or move toward the other leg. So again, two recommendations: a good pillow for your head, and to make sure that you have a pillow between your knees. For you back sleepers, put that pillow underneath your knees to keep your hamstrings a little bit loose, and make sure that you have a flatter pillow than you would use on your side, because your head doesn't need as much support on your back. There are some curved pillows out there that really do a great job. Your head would lay in the curve, and you have a little bit more support under the neck. So yeah, put a little bit of time and thought into what you're doing when you're sleeping, because most of us spend a third of our time in the bed, right? Relaxing our body is really helpful to decrease stress, right? So these are just some ideas. The first three are breathing techniques. My favorite is pursed lip breathing, and being an asthmatic. So any of you asthmatics out there, or COPD folks that just have trouble with breathing, pursed lip breathing is a technique you can do where you breathe in through your nose, and then you pucker your lips and you push the air out at a slower rate through a smaller opening. And so, I'd suggest you start with 2 seconds breathing in and 4 seconds breathing out through that smaller opening, and what's going to help relax your body and help you get some better oxygen exchange. And then, deep breathing, sometimes just doing 2 or 3 deep breaths in a row, in through your nose, out through your nose, really slow, helps to calm your body down. So don't discount these. They're very effective. Massage, obviously, going for a nice relaxation massage helps. Meditation, there's so much value here. There's an app called Headspace, I think it's called. It's really cool. Check it out. You have to pay for it, but it really helps you kind of organize your thoughts, think about your body, and really helps to center. Really good meditation exercise that you all can do is to close your eyes, set a time and just notice your body. Be aware of what you're doing. Think about the breathing. Think about, how your body feels. Think about how your arm feels. Think about how your leg feels. And just, again, be in the moment. Be aware of what you're doing. And it really helps to calm yourself down. And then the last thing here is music and art therapy. I think these are great. Putting on some classical music, just laying there, just relaxing. Art therapy, some of us just find it more relaxing to paint or to do some type of artsy craft, right? So, whatever it is that fits your lifestyle and helps you find some relaxation, figure it out, right? Try some of these different things and see if you can find that, right? And then lastly, yoga, right? So we all know what yoga is. We kind of do. If you never participated in yoga, definitely give it a shot. It's a way of joining your body and mind, right? So it helps to decrease cortisol, which decreases your stress, decrease your blood pressure, your heart rate, and get you in a more relaxed state. Anybody can do yoga, right? When I say do yoga, I'm not saying go join the most advanced one you can find. No, beginner yoga, right? You can do it from home, right? Check out some YouTube videos. There's nothing wrong with trying to do some of these things because it helps you tie in the breathing component as well as relaxation. I think it's going to be something that you all can benefit from, right? So I can't believe that
I can.
It's already 12 o'clock. Oh man. So I'm sorry I had to rush through the last bit there, but yeah, I mean, obviously you can tell that there's more to this. It's a very large topic, but as a caregiver, you have to think about your body, right? So I hope you guys can do that. Feel free to reach out to me for any questions you guys might have about what we talked about today or anything really. So I'm just glad to be here.
Thanks, Doc. Have a delicious day. I'll talk to you soon.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
So that was fabulous. And I tell you, he keeps me in shape. And I really am very cognizant of how much water I drink and how much I walk. And I go to Curves a couple of mornings a week because I got a lot to do. I need to take care of this body to do all that kind of stuff. So we're going to take a little break here. And then at 12:20, we will have my friend, Brenda Grishmeyer, and we're going to talk about Reiki for caregivers, Reiki healing for caregivers.
Choosing the right chiropractor is an important choice to make. Located in Seminole, the Alexander Spine Center team is trained on the latest chiropractic treatments and technologies. At Alexander Spine Center, you'll find chiropractic and physical therapy care that is safe, effective, and a natural approach to pain and other health-related issues. Chiropractic unlocks your body's potential and natural healing process to ensure your life is a healthy life. We treat clients from the womb to the tomb. Call 727-397-3000 for a free consultation today or visit our website at www.alexanderspinecenter.com.
They take good care of me twice a week. And did you know they got the Reader's Choice Award for 2019 for the best chiropractic in Pinellas County? So check them out.